Article 1 is the legislative, Article 2 executive, Article 3 judicial, Article 4 is state and federal interactions, Article 5 how to amend, Article 6 the supreme law of the land, and Article 7 the ratification procedure. We are here, right where the arrow is pointing, executive. All right, Article 2 addresses the issues of establishing the office of the president. It addresses how the president will be chosen and the duties, powers, and the privileges, not the rights, but the privileges of the executive branch and the limitations of the executive branch. Now, do we remember the difference between rights and privileges? All right. Sorry?
Sorry, I called you sir by accident for the second time.
I've been called sir before. I will live. All right. So, the office of the president under the Constitution is different from the office of the president under the Articles of Confederation. So let's talk about a little bit about what the president did under the Articles of Confederation. That entire government was extremely decentralized. Extremely, to the point of being unable to function. The president under the Articles of Confederation was elected by the Continental Congress. That executive served a term that was only 1 year long, and he had almost no power whatsoever. I think he got to bang the gavel at meetings. Because the president had almost no power, the articles, the entire government had so little power, they ended up with really lengthy delays in making any decisions whatsoever. When things didn't go right, there were a lot of people saying it's his fault, no, it's his fault, no, it's his fault, no, it's not his fault, it's his fault. And general chaos. It just didn't work very well at all, which is why that perpetual union was falling apart after only 10 years. So they needed to address all the issues in the Articles of Confederation president weakness when they were writing the Constitution. So let's look at the text. The text says the executive power shall be vested in a president of the United States of America. First, I've got to pull it apart later, but I want to just stop here and talk about this word vested. Because we tend to gloss over it. Yeah, power's vested. Okay, he's got the power. Yawn, go on. Vested is actually a really interesting and important term. It means that the power is assigned to the president, or in the case of Congress where all powers herein granted shall be vested in a Congress. The executive power shall be vested means the power is assigned to the president and he does not have the authority to delegate that power to somebody else except where it is so stated in the text. He can't offload it to another bureaucracy or somebody else. He can't point the finger and say, she made the decision, it's her fault. Yes, you. Can't do it. Vested. Power is vested. It's in the president. Executive power shall be vested in a president of the United States of America. He shall hold his office during the term of 4 years, and together with the vice president, chosen for the same term, which would be 4 years, at the same time, same term, be elected as follows. And I've put this just the parts that are still in effect. Each state shall appoint in such manner as the legislature thereof may direct a number of electors equal to the whole number of senators and representatives to which the state may be entitled in the Congress. But no senator or representative or person holding an office of trust or profit under the United States shall be appointed an elector. The Congress may determine the time of choosing the electors, the day on which they shall give their votes, and the day shall be the same throughout the United States. No person except a natural-born citizen or citizen of the United States at the time of the adoption of this Constitution shall be eligible to the office of president. Neither shall any person be eligible to that office who shall not have attained to the age of 35 years and been 14 years a resident within the United States. The President shall at stated times receive for his services a compensation, which shall neither be increased nor diminished during the period for which he shall have been elected, and he shall not receive within that period any other emolument from the United States or any of them, any of the states. Before he enter on the execution of his office, he shall take the following oath or affirmation: I do solemnly swear or affirm that I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States and will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States. All right, so let's discuss it now that we've heard all the words. The executive office is named. We've got a term of office that's 4 years long, and the second executive, the vice president, has the same term of office. So the president is the name of the elected head of a Republican state. And the term of office spans 2 terms of representatives and 2/3 of a term of a senator. Why would that be? Anybody got an idea? Sir?
They chose 2, they chose 6, so they thought, why not choose 4?
Eeny, meeny, miny, mo, 2, 4, 6, yeah, sure, one. Nice idea, probably not.
Average?
Average, that's another way of saying what he said. What's the purpose of the representatives? It's to represent the will of the people, right? That's why it's only a 2-year term, so that they stay close to their state. What's the purpose of the Senate? Represent the states. They're supposed to be older, they're supposed to have a longer lookout, 6 years. So a president with a 4-year term, who is to be the executive, spans a couple of the terms of representatives, so he has a longer viewpoint. He's just not looking for the next 2 years to do his job. He's looking for a couple of terms of representatives. But by alternating it every 4 years, it's not as long a term as the Senate has. So we're talking a little bit about point of view. A president is looking not completely short term, not completely long term. Yes, he's kind of in the middle. Yes, that's kind of a sweet spot. But there was a reason for everything they did and for every choice they made. And you might want to do a little bit of research on your own to think and see why they picked 4 years. Right? All these points to ponder that I've got up here for you. I'll talk a little bit about them, but I'm not going to talk about them extensively because I want you to do it. In everything that you're hearing this week, you should be thinking, okay, why'd they do it that way? What did that mean? Why did they not do it a different way? Instead of just learning stuff, learn the whys. Learn to ask why. So the states are appointing electors equal to the state's number of senators and representatives. No office holder can be an elector, and the Congress sets the electors' voting day. Some of the repercussions of that is we have an electoral college. That's what they call that group of electors from all the states. Equal to the state's number of senators and representatives. Why is that? You.
Because it was an equal way of having a good amount of representation for the population for each state. So each state gets 2 senators, and then their representatives are based on the population. So it was an easy way to balance it out.
It's a way to balance out the interests of the states and the people, right? So both are represented in a way that is reasonably equitable. Because again, it's the same reason as they had in making a House and a Senate. If you just go by representatives, the high population states have it in the bag. and everybody ignores the small population states. If you just do it by states, then the high population states that legitimately have more interest are relegated to no more interest than teeny tiny Rhode Island. So who's actually electing the president? Not you. You always have your hand up, which is great, but let's put the onus on someone else. You.
The delegates.
The delegate.
Like the Congress. No.
I think you're close, but you're not using the right terms. Yes, in the back.
Electoral college.
The Electoral College. So they are doing the actual voting for president. But the Electoral College is, let's look at this one again. The state appoints the electors. So who's electing the president?
The people, the states.
In the back?
The states.
The states. The people don't elect the president. The states elect the president. Which is why all the fussing and flailing about the popular vote numbers last November was utterly pointless, except as an object lesson in how little people know about the Constitution. The people don't elect the president, the states do. Sir.
How come we all vote in November then?
How come we all vote? That's a great question. Because the states have decided that remember the text says in what they'll choose electors depending on how they decide internally. The states have decided that they will each have 2 slates of electors, one for the Democrat Party, one for the Republican Party. And whoever wins the popular vote in that state gets the electors of that party sent. Now, most of the states have an all or nothing. Some of them have a proportional. So if 60% goes for one party, they get 60% of the electors. But it's the states that make those decisions internally.
So we
But that's why we vote in November, is that we, the people of the states, are telling our state what we think they should be doing with the electors.
So we indirectly.
We advise the state, which then follows its own rules. But it is the states, not the people, who elect the president. So if you then understand that the states elect the president, now all of a sudden this no office holder may be an elector makes a bit more sense, right? Because if you're a state official, if you're a federal official, you're in a really good position to cut a deal and to get special favors. Okay, you want to be elected in? I'll be on your side, assuming I get the position of Secretary of the Treasury. I'll be good. And Congress sets the electors' voting day. That is not the November day we go to the polls. It's a different day, and it's in the Constitution. I don't have that stuck in my memory, but they have a specific day where the electors of the states meet and submit their official votes for president. Yes,
I think it's a Monday in December.
it's something like that. You can look up the details. Okay? So, why is it important for that to be the same day nationwide? All right, you.
Because if they're voting on certain days, something weird happened and they end up voting differently.
Something weird could happen, yes. The other idea would be sort of what happens with the primaries, where somebody's got momentum, whatever that means, and you get jumping on a bandwagon instead of each state thinking who's going to serve as our executive best, and all voting on the same day. Okay, it talks about being a natural-born citizen or citizen. At the time the Constitution was adopted, why'd they have that little provision? right? Because nobody was a citizen of the United States who was 35 years old in 1787, right? This country hadn't existed, so you couldn't be. Points for you to ponder, and I'm not going to go through this because there's an awful lot of information that you should know about. What makes you a natural born citizen? And there's a lot of people that say, oh, well, that's, very loosey-goosey, and there's a lot of opinions about that. No. Aimé Vattel and the Law of Nations. It was written about many years before they wrote the Constitution. He goes into, there we go, great detail about what a natural-born citizen is. It has very little to do with where you were born and everything to do with the allegiance of your parents. So, for example, John McCain, who was born out of the country when his father, who was in the Navy, was stationed outside the country, he is a natural-born American. Somebody born in this country whose parents are citizens or subjects of another nation is not a natural-born American because their parents' allegiance is to another nation. Yes?
So let's say those people are legally immigrants and they came here. So they
Legal immigrants who intend to that's different. We're talking about people who, for example, are here for school, or came here on vacation and the wife goes into labor early, or they came here in order to have an American citizen baby. No. And that whole anchor baby issue was actually a footnote to a Supreme Court decision on a vaguely related topic in the early 1980s. So this is not ancient law that I'm trying to overturn. The ancient law was overturned by the 1982 footnote. So Aimé Vattel, he's the one to look up. What's so special about being 35?
I'm imagining it's because the founders probably thought that a person hits a certain point of maturity at that age.
Bingo. By then, you ought to have as much maturity as you're pretty much going to get. One would hope. At the very least, you're certainly a grown-up by 35. All right, and 14 years residence in the United States. I kind of don't know why they picked that. Do you have an idea?
Well, I have a question. So if the president has to be 35, why wouldn't the House or the Senate go up to that standard too?
Because of the different requirements of those offices. The House of Representatives, you're representing the people of your district. So you don't have to be particularly old in order to understand what the requirements of the people in your district are. Senators, again, you're representing the people of your state, or you're representing the interests of your state. President is representing the interests of the entire country put together. You want your most senior people there in that office. Yasmin?
Can you run when you're 34, but before January 20th, you're 35?
If on the day of inauguration you're going to be 35 or older, yeah.
That's what Marco Rubio was saying.
All right. One thing that I'll just put as a bug in your ear is that there's some people now talking about this whole 14-year residency. There may be people who are U.S. citizens by birth but have lived out of the country for, maybe they lived here until they were 15 or 16 and then they've been out of the country for 30 years. Would they really be representing the interests of the country? So this might be something to think about in the deep and distant future when we get the country back to a constitutional limitation on the federal government. All right, the president's compensation is not to be increased or decreased while he's in office. How come? Yes?
Because his opponents in the political scheme could try and use their positions to lower it, or he could try and abuse his supporters in the political scene to try and raise it.
No financial incentive for interfering with the president's actions in office. All right, and the oath of office here, what does the president swear to do? Let somebody else. Yes?
Uphold and defend the Constitution.
The Constitution. Does the president swear that his job is to protect the people? No, not his job. Except, as we see later, his prime function is to protect the Constitution. All right, Article 2, Section 2, the text. The President shall be Commander-in-Chief of the Army and Navy of the United States and of the militia of the several states when called into the actual service of the United States. He may require the opinion in writing of the principal officer in each of the executive departments upon any subject relating to the duties of their respective offices, and he shall have power to grant reprieves and pardons for offenses against the United States except in cases of impeachment. He shall have power to make treaties with 2/3 of the senators. He shall nominate and appoint ambassadors, other public ministers, and consuls, judges of the Supreme Court, and all other officers of the United States whose appointments are not here and otherwise provided for. Congress may by law vest, there's that word again, the appointment of such inferior officers as they think proper in the president alone, in the courts of law, or in the heads of department. So 2/3 senators for treaties, 2/3, no, advice and consent of the Senate, all other by majority. President shall have power to fill vacancies that may happen during the recess of the Senate. Senate, not House. Gee, Senate, not House. Think about that. By granting commissions. All right, President's the Commander-in-Chief of the Army and Navy at all times, but the militia only when called into actual service of the country. So why do we want to put the military under civilian command? Yes?
To avoid martial law.
To avoid martial law, to avoid a military coup, because this is a government of the people, by the people, and for the people, not of the military, by the military, and for the military. So what else does the militia do if they're not in federal service? Just, like go to the town common and train on weekends and then go to the pub afterwards and trade stories?
Like when our country first started, they were the ones who were going to protect us from the government if they ever were radicalized.
They could protect us from the government, yeah, and you had your hand up?
They were there to protect the states,
There to protect the individual states. What was going on in 1787? Did we still have trouble with Indian raids? Did we still have trouble with the French on occasion? Did we still have trouble in all sorts of fashions? I mean, who was it that won the war against the British? It was the Continental Army, which was made up of the militias of the states. So the militia's prime purpose here is in service to the states whenever the states need them. They're called into federal service if the need is so great, we need more than what's in the Army and Navy. Require reports. Why would you require a report? Well, here, this needs to be addressed. You, go figure it out and bring me a report once you've figured it out, and then I'll decide what to do. Why? Because I'm busy. And besides, what do I know about sheep farming? You were a sheep farmer. Go tell me. Go figure out what's going on with our sheep trade. Reprieves and pardons except for impeachment. What are reprieves and pardons? Right? And again, I'm not going to go through all this. Among other things, we'll run out of time quickly. These are things, and I'll email these slides to anybody who wants them. Think about them, though. Treaties with the Senate's consent. Why do we have the Senate required to consent to treaties, ambassadors, and Supreme Court judges? Because all of those things affect the states. Dual sovereignty in our confederation, states and federal. States as sovereign entities get a say. Congress gets duty for lesser offices. Think about what are the lawful appointments of Congress. All right, Vacancies in office during the recess of the Senate. Gee, doesn't this say something about the anticipated time requirements of the Senate? Section 3, he shall from time to time give to the Congress information of the state of the Union. Convene both houses, receive ambassadors and other public ministers, take care that the laws be faithfully executed. State of the Union. That's a report given every year. At some point in your copious free time, look up the definition of kabuki theater. See how it applies to the State of the Union address. Convene both houses or adjourn both houses. What would be an extraordinary occasion? Again, something to think about. And receive ambassadors. This is a visible head of state function. In many ways, the executive is to be like the hired manager of your town. The selectmen make the rules. The town manager's job is to make sure the rules the selectmen put in place are followed properly. That the highway department paves the roads that they said they were going to pave and not a different road. That the trash gets picked up on the days the trash is supposed to get picked up, and that holidays are posted so that people know that they don't put their trash out on Tuesday, they have to wait till Wednesday. The town manager is in charge of making sure the laws are faithfully executed. That's the point of the presidency, plus these visible head of state functions, because if you're going to have the ambassador from Austria to dinner, you're not going to have the governors of 50 states there. You're going to have the one president. So, president's sworn duty is uphold the Constitution. How do you carry out that duty in respect to laws that are in accordance with the Constitution? You make sure they're carried out. How do you carry out that duty if a law is not in accordance with the Constitution?
Well, you make sure it's not carried.
You make sure it's not carried out. This is an unconstitutional law. We are not going to enforce it. Attorney General, make sure that no one is prosecuted for breaking this law because it is not a constitutional law. This is part of the checks and balances. And the president's duty is to uphold the Constitution. The last thing I'm going to talk about is impeachment, treason, bribery, high crimes, and misdemeanors. Presidents removed from office only due to impeachment and conviction for treason, bribery, or high crimes and misdemeanors. Impeachment's a trial. Civil criminal charges come afterwards if he's removed from office. What are high crimes? Failure to uphold his oath, usurpation of power, mismanagement, incompetence, evil behavior. And high is the status of the official, that being the president, not the severity of the offense, or they wouldn't talk about misdemeanors, they'd only talk about felonies. All right, no time for questions because Ms. Harper's taking over.